Now that we have heard so many interesting contributions, I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Vassiliou, European Commissioner. I'm sure, Madam Vassiliou, that you were very pleased when you heard Victoria saying culture is a basic need, not a luxury, because I have heard you, as our ambassador in Brussels, saying that on many occasions. And it is something which is so important for us to have in Brussels somebody like you, and you have a very long experience as a parliamentarian yourself in the national parliament and also in the European Parliament, and then you got the responsibility to be Madame Culture in Brussels, and Madame Éducation, because we spoke also the importance of education. So I would like you, first of all, to hear from you, because you have been at the beginning of the launch of the new Narrative for Europe project. Has it lived up to your expectations? What we have until the process, where it is going, and what we have delivered, and also whatever reaction you would like to share with our members after all the various interventions that you have just now heard.
Thank you, Snežka. Thank you, everybody. First of all, let me say that I consider myself privileged to be responsible for this portfolio, because I think it is a privilege to do something, to be doing something, or to serve something in which you believe. And I wouldn't be happy to have a portfolio like High Representative or responsible for finances or competition. It wouldn't make me happy. I'm very happy because I do something which I like and I believe in. So we inaugurated this initiative, the new Narrative for Europe, hoping that we shall mobilize this tremendous force of the artists, of the intellectuals, of the writers, who is really a very big force in Europe, but who are rarely heard. And from that point of view, apart from the about 10 different events that we organized all over Europe, apart from those, I still believe there is a power there which remains immobile. So we have to mobilize more these people, because when they speak, they are believed. When the politicians or the technocrats speak, I don't think many people will pay attention anymore, I'm afraid. But when the artists speak, people will listen to them. And also they will listen to the young people. Because being responsible also for youth, I have worked very closely to the young people, and I really believe in their power. And after all, the future is theirs. So we don't have to dictate to the young people what they will do. They know better what is best for them. So I want to hear more the young people. And I feel privileged because I am responsible for some programs which have a direct effect on the young people. We see from our studies that all the young people who participated in Erasmus or Comenius or in our culture program or the media program, they are very pro-Europeans. Why? Because they discover what Europe is all about. I mean, how can you explain to a Cypriot who is very isolated in our small island what is European Union about? They only know now their misery about the European Union. But when they travel and they meet with other young people, they hear so many languages. And I must say that I disagree completely with people who say multilingualism is an expense. No, it is not an expense. It's necessary, because with one coffee per person, we give the chance to every citizen to communicate in his or her own language and express themselves in a much better way. So when the young people are exposed to all these multilingualism, and all these cultures, which is our richness, then they realize what Europe is all about. So we help them to become pro-Europeans. And I must say something which I think it's Mr. Svoboda who said it about history. Or is it Mr. Buzek? I'm not sure. History. I think you cannot speak of an educated person unless he or she learned history. But what do we mean by learning history? Do we learn history only of our nation? No, I mean, we have to learn about European history. Then we will be in a better position to understand each other, to understand the politics of what is happening around us. How could a young person know about Odessa and the multiculturalism and multilingualism of Odessa without knowing about European history? But when I try to speak to ministers of education that they have to introduce European history in their schools, they look at me with fear. No, how can we interpret European history? We have to find a way of presenting in an objective way, as far objective as possible, what has happened in Europe. Because our young people did not experience war. I mean, I lived all my life thinking about war and conflict. And it's enough. We want our children and grandchildren to know what is the war and what is peace. So, and young people, of course, they have not experienced war, but they have experienced a lot of uncertainties, a lot of fears. They care about their future. They care about whether they will find a job or whether they could stay employed. So these uncertainties make the young people very vulnerable. And that's why we have all these extremist and populist movements around Europe nowadays, because they exploit these young people. They exploit these miserable Europeans who suffer because of the crisis. And we have to rebut them. We have to be engaged. We have to respond to their Eurosceptics. I mean, we cannot afford becoming disengaged.
Absolutely.
We have to be engaged. And we have to reply to these people, you know, who speak against Europe. But we have to reply in a convincing way. And that is why I believe that the worst enemy of our union is non-participation.
Non-participation.
Non-voting in the next elections will be the worst enemy of our union. So what you said, Sneska, before, that each one of us, we are all convinced here. I'm sure that if not all, the majority, we are all pro-Europeans. But we have to speak out. We have to convince people to go and vote. Don't think about your excursion that day. Don't think about your comfort. You have to go and vote, because non-voting is not the answer and will only help the Eurosceptics. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner, for these forceful words that you have shared with us. And of course, and especially, you have recalled that Europe is about peace. It is a peace project, and that you are coming from a country that is still traumatized by a conflict. I come from a country which is still traumatized by the conflict, and it has to stop. And especially we have to avoid that other countries get traumatized. And because of that, I want, Beppe, the slide previous, why another piece of work of Plan 2. 2012, the European Union... yes, of course, please.
Plan 2 favored me in Cannes last year by presenting me a work of his, saying, "Merci, Androulla, pour l'exception culturelle."
So I think having people also like artists and cartoonists like Plantu who believe in Europe, who believe in culture and who believe in peace, the European Union, Nobel Prize, Peace Prize given in 2012 to the European Union, it was, some people said, no, what have European Union done for peace? What has European Union done for peace? It has done the major achievement in the history of the European Union. And this is why, this is the moment that of course I see Eric Schulz sitting there. We are so proud that next year our award ceremony will take place in the very room, in the ceremonial hall of the town hall of Oslo, where the Nobel Peace Prize was given to the European Union and to many, many other people, and to the lady from Vienna, the first woman and who ever got Bertha von Suttner, whom you have also, in fact, dedicated your work on the Hail the Torah. But I'm sure that you want to say that the audience want to ask some questions. Would you like to ask, to contribute, to ask a question to one of our distinguished panelists? Here, is there somebody? Here is the micro.
I would like to not so much ask a question.
Name, please, name.
Sorry, Laurie Neal. I'm on the Europa Nostra Council. I'd like not so much to ask a question, but to bring to public knowledge the wonderful project called Historiana.eu that the European Union is supporting. And it has been organized by Euroclio, another European network of history educators. And they have put together this website of European history and heritage together. And the idea is not to emphasize people, battleships, battles, but to emphasize the things that bind the Europeans together. So it's a project that's already existing, it's already supported by the European Union, and I think it's a wonderful project.
Thank you. Thank you. We are so used to hear about bad news from Europe. It's so good when somebody stands up and tells you that there are some good things going on and they're even supported by the European Union. Is there somebody else who would like to contribute to this conversation? Or shall I ask the panelists of course, if the panelists would like to sort of comment to each other. Is there, Mr. Svoboda, would you like to comment on anything we have heard?
That it is not too serious. I just want to mention, but don't take it too serious. The two prime ministers were speaking in the video we showed about the new narrative are no longer prime minister. I hope it's not a bad sign, but nevertheless, politicians should have the courage to speak about culture, as the Commission and many other people did.
Chancellor Merkel is still the prime minister.
Only the two have been shown here. So take the courage, speak about culture.
She was in Berlin on the 1st of March. Dr. Busek.
If you allow me to add, it was mentioned by one partner here in the panel. What we really need for Europe is a European public. We don't have a European public. I make it visible by a very simple example. Maybe you are telling me that I'm on a low culture. If you go home in your countries and switch through the TV programs, you will find, I think, European Championship on football, European Championship on skiing, European Championship on everything possible. You won't find a European talk show. You find in all the TV sets talk shows, national, and so sometimes boring. That's my personal opinion. I was running to the European Broadcasting Union. This is the Association of the Public Broadcasters. Why is there no European talk show about exchange? They said to me, you have to understand, it's quite clear. If we are doing so, we have divide the advertisement between us, and nobody wants to divide the money. A quite clear capitalistic answer, may I say. I think so far, I'm always saying we have one European talk show. You won't believe it. It's the Eurosong contest.
Oh, yeah.
Why? Because at the end of the Eurosong contest, we are voting about each other. And as a politician or as a historian, I may say, you can see the positive or negative judgment about neighbors quite clearly how they are voting. Because here you can see what are the reserves, what are the feeling against or in favor or and so on. My Swiss friends are always calling me afterwards, you have not voted for us. We are both countries at the Alpine area, so far you have to vote for. Huh? So my proposal, a practical proposal, let's make European talk shows, let's skip the songs as the Eurosong contest, let's only doing the voting. We are learning a lot out of it.
Dr. Busek, you're always giving good ideas. I really think that we could think about a Europa Nostra talk show, because we could be the ones to start, and in fact it is a little bit what we are doing now. But I will tell you, it's not only the Eurovision Song Contest, which is tomorrow evening. You will see another, I think quality-wise, slightly higher quality, the European Heritage Award ceremony. We somehow want to compare ourselves with the Eurovision Song Contest, and we even have a Public Choice Award, and this is going to be revealed tomorrow. 10,000 people voted, and they're not only voting for their own countries, what is very important, voting also for projects from different countries. Denis de Kergorlay, the voice of Europa Nostra in this panel, in this talk show. Denis, you have heard very, very interesting contribution, passionate contribution for Europe and for culture. I would like now to hear your voice and the voice of Europa Nostra, if you can comment on what you have heard.
Thank you, Sneska. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Does it work? Yes. Thank you, Sneska. Before talking as the Executive President of Europa Nostra, and since I am the French guy of this panel, I would like to start a little bit with my country. And I would like to go back to my youth and the General de Gaulle, and the General de Gaulle and Europe. I remember, I've seen him on the TV. He was submitted to presidential election. He had a contest, someone who was contesting him. His name was Le Canuet. It was in 1965. And Le Canuet was a centrist and a European. And de Gaulle was so upset against him because he had, because of Le Canuet, de Gaulle had to be on the second tour. He was not elected at the first tour. And so I remember him jumping on his chair and saying, it's not enough to say Europe, 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 like sautant comme un cabri, etc. Europe is something else. And then, not at that moment, but at another moment, this sentence of le Général de Gaulle, ce n'est pas avec les vieux œufs durs que sont nos nations européennes que l'on fait une omelette. It's not with the boiled eggs that are our nations that you make a good omelette. But in 1963, November, just at the moment of the creation of Europa Nostra, when General de Gaulle went to Washington for the burial of John Kennedy, who had been assassinated on the 22nd of November, 1963, de Gaulle had this word, c'était un Européen. So in his mouth, the best compliment that he could do for an American was to say he was a real European. So I think this explains the contradiction that some Eurosceptics can be Eurosceptic for lots of reasons, but if you go a little behind, sometimes in a Eurosceptic, you will find also someone who has feelings for Europe. But then it's all the problem of the narrative, of the way you speak to the people. If you speak in a way that is empathic, they will have good feelings for Europe. But for the moment, the parole is very much more to the demagogues, who speak badly of Europe because they are putting all the responsibilities of the hard times in which we are to Europe. So when I saw the movie you showed us on Ukraine, and this, those young people who dared to do that, that public show playing Beethoven, the hymn of Europe, that was an intense moment of emotion for all of us. And that reminds me that a friend of mine, well-known geopolitic journalist called Dominique Moisy, he has written a book that has been well perceived internationally. It is called The Politics of Emotion. And he shows that, or the geopolitics of emotion. And he was saying, globally in the world of today, emotions are really driving les peuples. And very much in the Western world, the main feeling is fear of future. In the Arabo-Muslim world, it is humiliation. And in the new world that is Asia today, it is hope and optimism. Emotions, we have to take them into account. If we want to interest our European compatriots again to the dream of Europe, we have to find the right words, and we have to put the finger on the right emotions. I must confess that when Snežka was talking to me of the new narrative for Europe, I was a kind of skeptical. I was saying, okay, she goes in all those cities, she meets intellectuals and they talk, and maybe it's blah, 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 and maybe les paroles s'envolent, as was saying my father, les écrits restent. But if les écrits are boring, such one of our members said about the narrative Europe, then what is the rest of it? Well, the rest of it, I think, now I understand. A meeting like this one, and I guess the narrative, new narrative for Europe, is several meetings in different cities of Europe, where people who have their own personal experience to as an input is absolutely, I think, fantastic. And that reminds me of this discussion between two children that I have witnessed one day, and the one explaining to the other, do you know why ideas are more important than money? So the other one says, I don't know. Well, listen, I have 1 franc, and you have the equivalent, it was before the euro, let's say in lire. We exchange what we have, and at the end of the exchange, we have, you have now 1 franc, and I have the equivalent in lira. But if we have each one an ID and that we exchange the ID, at the end of the exchange, we have 2 IDs each, because we have the one we had, and we have now the others. And so that's why I think that's good. So we really need to, Europa Nostra is not very rich, but Europa Nostra promotes the exchange of IDs, and so we are becoming very rich of those exchanges. And ideas and emotions. And I will end my propos by a link to the historic monuments we are fighting for. After all, and that I'll allow myself to be a little personal, until I was 30 years old, I had no interest in monuments. Not really, I would say. But then when I became 30, I had a big chateau that fell on my head, and I had to take care of it, and then it was a conversion. And at the time I was thinking, why is it so strange? It's the same reflection that someone said about Europe yesterday. Europe, it's a very strange destiny. All those who are outside of Europe, they want to come in, and all those who are in, they want to get out of Europe, or to get Europe to go out. And I was, having the same reflection. Why is it that those who are in chateaus, they just want to get away because they are so boring, like golden prisons? And why is it that the others who do not are accustomed to chateaus want to come in? Well, it's because you had to change the image and the functioning of chateaus and make them welcoming so that people want and feel good. And I found out that finally this is the purpose of the historic buildings. They are the places where you can have exchanges of ideas and exchanges of emotions, and that it is the historical buildings are inspiring, and they allow a lot of things in terms of real important exchanges between us. So we are fighting in Europa Nostra to save the monuments. But as Placido Domingo, when he joined us, he said, what do you do with the monuments that you save? I want them, for instance, to be places where young musicians can practice their art and become great artists. And so it is this. We are fighting for the preservation of the historical sites because they are places that can connect people. I love the idea of the bridge. There are figures, the walls separate, a bridge reunite, and when a bridge, you don't even have to show a passport to cross a frontier. In my youth, I joined an organization called Doctors Without Frontiers, and the name, just the name of it, was absolutely appealing to people, and this organization, by the way, got the Nobel Prize. So this is, I think, what we are trying to do, is fight for the historic monuments, fight for the sites, fight for the memory, fight for the connected generations, they connect the people, and allow the culture to develop, because when the culture is appropriate, like it was in this movie, you can think that it's so powerful that it can be even more powerful than weapons. Thank you.
Now. Thank you, Denis. I think we have come to the end. We see each other later. We have come to the end of this fascinating conversation. I want to thank all the panelists. But just wait, I want to show you the last cartoon of Plantu. That was the cartoon that Plantu live cartooned on the 1st of March in Berlin in the presence of Chancellor Merkel and President Barroso. The future of Europe is art. And in fact, interestingly enough, I have found here the proceedings of a conference called The Sound of Europe, which was held in Salzburg in January 2006. It was, I think, an important anniversary of Mozart and an Austrian presidency in the EU. And Erhard Busek said there, we are on our way to giving the colorful picture of Europe a frame. And I thought that that was a very interesting cartoon of Plantu in response to your remark. I want to leave you with a laugh, and I also want to wish you a wonderful continuation of this Congress. For those of you who will be at the opera at 5 o'clock, our president looks forward to singing for you, and he, of course, looks forward to meeting you tomorrow evening at the Book Theater. And I hope you understand he couldn't be here because he had to a little bit spare his voice for the Nabucco. Thank you so much.